Hi, welcome. This is the Caddy Info Cadillac Conversation. You have found us. We do these on Thursday nights, and we get together and talk about Cadillacs. Tonight, I have two of our regulars with us. Air Mike from the forums.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. And Cadillac Jim from CaddyInfo.com.
Howdy.
We also have with us Mr. Motorama Live himself, Barry Lohman from an undisclosed parking lot.
Yeah, welcome. Well, I guess I shouldn't say welcome. I'm not hosting this. I'm sorry about that. I'm not used to that. Yeah, Barry Lohman from Motorama Live, hashtag Motorama, for those of you on the Twitterverse every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern. We're proud to announce that we have added the lovely, the talented, the amazing, I'm going to have to break out a thesaurus because my redneck self doesn't have much more to add there. But Bruce Nunley, we've added him to our staff over on the Motorama Live, so we're excited about that. You guys check us out. I know this is a Cadillac chat. I'm a big GM guy, race GM stuff, but I just want to take this opportunity to show you guys something from the dark side here. It's the new Ford F-150 Platinum. I expect a lot of boos from this crowd, but that's what we're driving this week over here on the hashtag Motorama. So if you want to know anything about the new F-150 Platinum, we're taking a road trip in it over the next 10 days. So feel free to hit us up, hashtag Motorama on Twitter, and we'll answer any questions about our experience with this truck on a long road trip. So back to you, Bruce.
Welcome, Barry. So as normal, if you hit the event page, you can throw questions up in the Q&A, and we will try and respond online to those questions. We're trying something a little different this week. If you use hashtag CaddyInfo, so hashtag CADDYINFO on Twitter, then it will pop up in my feed here, and we can address your question. And so in that case, it would look like this, where you'd see hashtag CaddyInfo is included in the question, and then this one happened to be a link to an Instagram post that I had made. Okay, and so if you want to tweet and interact with the video, that's the way you can do it. Of course, you can interact in the forums. We have a thread each week for the video in the forums. We also follow up in that thread after the forum with more information or references we didn't have right at hand. So if you want to find out more, keep up with the video in the forum. And you can watch the whole thing over again if you can't believe some of the things that happened on the show happened on the show. you can try the
What
forum
happens
over again.
in the Caddy Shack doesn't stay in the Caddy Shack.
well, yeah, but it's out in the interweb forever.
Uh-oh.
Okay, one of the things they had the autonomous driving conference, and our friends at Autoline did a great job of covering it. And I never get the references right, so forgive me if I have hobbled their name. But they had one of the Cadillac engineers on, and he was talking about the CT6 autonomous drive, the mode of autonomous drive that's coming in the 2017 Cadillac CT6. The CT6, of course, is going to be Cadillac's. It's a break from the current models, much more luxurious than the current models. But one of the things he mentioned was it's going to be autonomous drive. You don't have to have your hands on the steering wheel. You don't have to have your feet on the pedals. So it will drive down the highway, which is a big challenge, but you're still responsible. You still have to pay attention. So, Mike, how does that help? If you've got to watch the road.
I don't see how it helps, and I can't hardly see it working. I don't see anything useful in it myself.
Well, in autonomous driving at all, you mean?
Yeah. What are you going to do? Just go to sleep?
Well, no, you can't. You're responsible for keeping up with the road.
I think it's going to take special trackers in the road.
Well, there was some discussion about that, about whether there should be shared. In other words, the road would be responsible for warning you of traffic ahead, and the road would be responsible for warning you of construction. Jim, what do you think? If your CT6 could drive itself, but you were expected to watch it drive, how's that gonna work for you?
Well, I think my wife might appreciate that, but I'm not. I think it'd be great for commuting in places where you can depend on the road to have. I don't think the road needs to be smart. I just think it needs to have something in it that can reliably provide a signal to the car to track your lane.
But what are the if the car can drive by itself, but you're required to be on watch the entire time the car is driving itself, would you let the car drive itself, or would you simply drive?
Well, I didn't buy the car to ride in it. I bought the car to drive. But if you're talking about a CT, you're defining a different scenario, and so it's I'm going to have to get a mindset that's appropriate for that. But I would say that if I had something that had that feature, I would try it, and if I felt safe and/or liked it, I would use it. I occasionally use cruise control, and I think I might use that as a similar thing for interstate driving.
Now, I actually like my wife's car has the adaptive cruise control, which is the radar triggered cruise control, and I enjoy that, and I let the car drive on the adaptive cruise control, and it speeds up and slows down. But I drive the car. I'm not watching the car drive. Barry, what do you think?
Bruce, I was going to say, let me chime in on this. I'm not as familiar with the most recent advances with what the Cadillac system has done, because unfortunately I haven't been in a 15 or a 16 Caddy. Last thing I drove was a V-Wagon, and I wasn't worried about keeping in my lane so much as drifting technique in that one. But the systems in the Ford, both in the new Lincoln, I'll use the Lincoln MKZ as an example. Ford really got out there with their lane assist, I believe that's what they call it, and it's a pretty good program overall. But I will say that Ford's been experimenting with this since I think 2011 publicly, longer than that in development. There are a few things about their system that I feel like aren't quite there yet, especially when we're talking about autonomous driving versus a driver's aid. One of the biggest things, and this is if you go buy a 2016 MKZ, you will find this in the Lincoln right now. It does keep the lane pretty well, but I did notice kind of a ping-pong effect, if you will. Whereas if you completely let go of the wheel, of course, it gives you a warning on the dash. It knows that you have your hands off the steering wheel, which I find interesting, but it will actually veer itself back up from, it'll spot where the lines are, the white or yellow line, and it'll ping the car back from that. But it'll ping pong, like I say. It'll be on the left, it'll send you to the right side of the road, it'll send you back to the left side of the road. So eventually it will center itself in most straightaway scenarios, and even going around a corner, it will kind of hold you into the road, but only up to a point. It'll usually ping you about a half a dozen times before it finally kind of gives up on you and lets Darwinism take over and lets you go out of the lane, or in the case of completely out of the road. The other thing that I'd like to note is in the cruise control system, adaptive cruise control. This is a feature that I feel like has a long way to go. I recently put about 3,000 miles on a Ford product that we drove cross country and back, and we tried the adaptive cruise control out extensively. It drove me nuts, and the reason it drove me nuts, I tend to drive like a lot of enthusiasts, somewhere between 4 and 9 over is where I set the cruise. I know you're not really supposed to do that.
On roads in Mexico.
Well, exactly. On roads in Mexico where we're doing 50 over. No, I mean, but normal traffic flow on the interstate, most people are doing about 4 over. And so when we do our fuel mileage runs, etc., we usually gauge those real world numbers at about 4 over on a highway run. And on a long run, what we found is if you set the adaptive cruise control, and let's just say you're in the right lane and you are constantly having to get over into the left lane to pass big trucks or whatever, if you don't get over about 1/8 of a mile or better before you reach that vehicle, what you'll experience is the system will start to slow you down. And even if you adjust that feature back to a minimal intrusion setting, what I have found is that if you're in your lane, you're not even getting into the next lane. If the car in the lane next to you on either side veers over to almost touch the white line, it'll freak out on you and apply the brakes and slow you down. So if you're doing 79 miles an hour and a big rig drifts onto the line in the lane next to you on the left, for example, next thing you know, you'll be doing 50 miles an hour because it will aggressively apply the brakes thinking that you're about to have an accident.
This became the art of adaptive cruise control driving in my mind, because I would space my passes out far enough that the adaptive cruise control couldn't slow the car down.
And you would think that you could do that. And we experimented with that to see if that could make a better scenario. What we found is, of course, the second that you leave, it's like the old adage of, I swear, officer, I wasn't tailgating, but every time I leave an extra 5 inches in front of me, somebody slices in front of me. And that's what happens in the real world. You know, you try, even if you start even if you start getting over a quarter of a mile, which is extreme, before you need to, inevitably something will happen, and something will trip up the system. And so I feel like that it works well most of the time, but therein lies the problem. Most of the time won't cut it for an autonomous system. So they're working on it, but they still got a way to go.
Yeah, I certainly think that that's fair. And today's systems aren't autonomous systems. So, but I actually enjoy, you know, the part I enjoy about the adaptive cruise control is that it works at all.
That is true. I mean, you got to give them props that it does work, and it does work. And we've driven a couple other models of vehicles where it did work to varying degrees. But yeah, in my opinion, at least amongst the American automakers, which I'm a big American car guy. I love all cars, but I'm a big three kind of guy. And amongst the big three, they all still got a little ways to go with the system, in my opinion.
Okay, let's talk about your top 5 things to do while you're driving an autonomous car that requires you to watch it drive.
Drink beer.
Drink beer. That's an excellent. No way. You're supposed to be responsible.
Well, of course, we never advocate drinking and driving, but herein, if it is an autonomous car, if it's truly autonomous, I mean, take the Google car. The Google car doesn't even have a steering wheel in it. So literally, you could not intervene and manually take over a Google car even if you wanted to. If that's the case, could they really write you for DUI in a scenario where you're basically a passenger even if you're in a driver's seat?
Yeah, but this is the Cadillac show, and we're talking about the CT6. When you're driving the new CT6 autonomous car, 2017, and you're not driving it, what are your top 5 things to do while you monitor the road but don't drive it?
Assuming it did work. I mean, this is not this year's Ford. It's a year or two's technology ahead, and it works. Let's just assume that.
It's encouraging texting, isn't it?
Oh, texting. Mike's going to be busy texting people, hey, I'm driving down the highway in my CT6, and I can text.
Hey, it means you don't have to pull over on Thursday nights if you want to tune in to Caddy Info. You could just do like I'm doing right now, put your phone up on the steering wheel and set all the things. And, of course, I'm in park right now, but you could just be trucking on down the road 79 miles an hour just without a care in the world.
And that's hashtag Caddy Info if you want to participate.
My car reads text messages to me and asks if I want to respond or ignore, and then I can respond with my voice. I will tell them, don't bother me, I'm in the car. Or I can say, you canceled our appointment after I took off work and I'm going 40 miles and I'm a little irritated, which I actually did once.
Perfect. Now the CT6 will actually be a connected car so that it will have Wi-Fi connectivity, and you possibly would. Now, what effect will autonomous control have on the lockouts that we have now? For example,
my phone has died. Crap, I gotta change the battery.
I bet there's a truck nearby you could plug into. So right now I can't change my nav destination using the buttons on the screen. I can't dial a phone number using the buttons on the screen. Would all that change with autonomous cars?
I would think.
I can. The destination works for me. I can't add a new one, but I can delete it or I can pause it, and I can add a waypoint. But if you want to do something complicated, you have to stop.
Right,
and you can do that while you're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. My complaint is I want a button that says I promise the passenger's doing it, not the driver. Let my wife set the navigation destination, please, so that I don't have to pull this car over don't make me pull this car over to change the destination. Now there is a way. If you have pre-programmed memory points, you can select those, even when you're driving. So, but I think that would be, if the cars are more autonomous, then would you be able to stream our YouTube Hangout into your CT6? Should we not prevent streaming?
Yeah, like watch TV or YouTube or
video.
Hangouts. Yeah.
But you're still supposed to be watching the road in this first one in 2017.
Well, you're supposed to be watching the road while you text now.
Instead of texting now.
Really.
But you're right, texting might be unacceptable. That's gonna make it people even worse about texting while they drive. But hopefully, texting won't be such a thing for very long. Maybe texting is just a temporary fad, right? That will have real-time two-way video, which will be even more distracting.
I suspect that you have these things allow you to completely get distracted or go off on doing something else besides paying attention to the car. When you need to pay attention to the car, you're not going to be paying attention to the car because things change and it has to happen right now, right?
Yeah, that convention where the car's going to drive itself, but you have to pay attention. You have ultimate liability or responsibility for monitoring the car. I think that's going to be tricky. I don't understand how that's going to play out, because either I'm responsible or the car's responsible. But this idea that the car's responsible, but I need to keep an eye on it, I find that troubling.
Something goes wrong, and then it's on you.
Yeah, the car's responsible unless there's a problem, and then it turns out you were responsible. Thank you very much. And it's your car after all. Now we got a little more confirmation from Dave Leone, who's the chief engineer at Cadillac. He was talking on one of the Motorman videos and said we will not see a V8 in an ATS-V. That the twin-turbo V6, it fits the nature of the ATS-V, it fits the weight profile of the ATS-V. They want the ATS-V as a track car, as a tight handler, as a lighter car. And so if they are going to come out with an ATS-V Black or an ATS-V Custom Edition or an ATS-V Plus is what some of the magazines were calling it, then where do you think they have to go to for an engine? Right now they got the 464 horsepower LF4 engine in there. They took the LF3, they pumped up the boost from 12 pounds to 18 pounds, redesigned the internals a bit, and made it into the LF4. So the LF4 has, a little different internals and 6 more pounds of boost. So, and that got them 464 horsepower. Where do you think they need to go with that?
They can just continue to boost them, can't they?
Yeah, just turn it up to 24 pounds, you think?
Well, realistically, people doing drag racing or whatever, they can make all kinds of horsepower and then more than they can use. So I would assume these car makers can make more and more horsepower just boosting them more.
Well, here's one of the things that confuses me on this topic. Every aftermarket tuner can get at least 50 more horsepower out of the LF3 engine.
They don't have to warranty the damn thing for 100,000 miles.
That's true. But if you're wanting to put out a limited edition model that you're only going to sell 500 of anyway, wouldn't you want to put a sharper calibration for 50 more horsepower and charge another $10,000 and mark it done?
Well, you would have to do something about the drivetrain warranty if you were going to overstress the drivetrain.
Oh, you're not overstressing that drivetrain. That drivetrain's the same thing that you find in the Corvettes that they're using. Now I say.
Well, let me talk about that little V6. So there's a limit to the specific output you can get out of that thing before the repeated thermal stresses and all these things get to be more than you can guarantee for 100,000 miles. If people are going to
the engine itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're definitely going to put more heat load on the intercooler, and you're going to be putting more heat load on the transmission.
I'm thinking of the pistons and rods and valves.
I was going to say you can't overload the transmission because It's the same one, the same automatic they use in the Corvette, but in the Corvettes they're overheating on the track, and so now the Corvette's got different form factor problem. Go ahead, Mike.
That CTSV had all this air cooling, you know.
Welcome back, Barry.
Hey, sorry, guys, my phone battery died, so I had to switch them out real quick.
We were just talking, I'll let Mike continue, but we were just talking about the ATSV. If they come out with a plus model and they need to exceed the 464 horsepower, then how many horsepower should the plus model have? Jim's question of the moment is how much can you still warranty an engine for 100,000 miles if you add more stress to it? Now, Mike, go ahead.
It's just because they've increased the ducting of the air and all that. They must be getting closer to the limits of, you know, the heat problem in the transmissions and all that.
Well, but the Corvette automatics are having trouble at the track with that transmission, the 8L90, but the Corvettes have completely different airflow model from an ATSV. The ATSV has, you know, more vertical room for coolers and so on.
Well, my point was that they're putting an emphasis on cooling running air into those areas because they have to be getting to the limits, I assume, you know, temperature-wise, and so if they put more stress on it, they're going to heat them up more.
Now, another Cadillac move would be to come out with a plus version or a black version that's manual transmission only, and just say, you know, this is our track car, and you can only get it with the 6-speed.
It's not going to have the performance of the automatic.
But I would argue that.
I'm just going by the numbers on the latest CTSs and Corvettes. They get better numbers with the automatics.
I can do you one better. I've got some extensive information. I'm being a racer. We've already had quite a bit of seat time with the 2015 Corvette Z06, the LT4, both with the 7 manual and the 8 automatic. Mm-hmm. And those numbers that the factory put out, you know, like 0 to 60 and quarter mile are fine. But what a lot of Corvette guys use the car for is up in the triple-digit ranges. And I can tell you that in 1 mile shootouts, the manual shift car is 2 miles an hour faster on average than an automatic shift car.
I can believe that for the losses, but if you look at the test times in Car and Driver and Road and Track and the other enthusiast magazines, the automatic cars tend to do better. And
yeah, we're getting to a point where the automatics frequently shift faster. I'm sorry.
Well,
yeah.
Remember, when they do that kind of testing, they're only worried about testing like 0 to 60.
Yeah.
So that's not the whole picture on these cars. While yes, the computer will help with all the traction goodies, ESC, all that kind of stuff turned on with the kind of power these cars are making and the new shifting capabilities of the new automatic transmission that GM's got. Yes, it will put power to the ground quicker than most people can shift on a 1.2 or a 2.3. But when you start looking at the 3.4, the 4.5, the 5.6, and on up, skill will take back over with once you get past that initial trying to get power to the ground on a 1.2, 2.3 shift, and the manual in the hands of a skilled technician is still overall a quicker car. So I just like to remind people of that I still tell people the old adage, if you can really drive one, then you're still better off with the manual in those cars.
Now, the ATSV though is targeted to be a track star. In other words, it's for not if you only want to run the quarter mile, you'd be better off getting a CTSV because the more power is always going to win. But the ATSV is about the balance and the cornering, right?
It is, and one of the things I can tell you about General Motors automatic transmissions, and this is going back, gosh, 30. I'm starting to tell my age a little bit, but we'll just call it 20-some years. But I got experience with them 30-some years of actually tracking these cars. You will run into cooling issues, especially on this new 8-speed transmission. You haven't heard the Cadillac guys talking about it as much, but remember, there's not that many of those transmissions out there behind the LT4 or even the LT1 just yet, where people are tracking them on the Caddy side. On the Corvette side, automatic transmission with the LT4 on a road course, you got 2 laps to show your stuff before you're either fighting limp mode or you need that new software upgrade, which doesn't really fix the problem. It's just allowing the transmission to operate at hotter operating temperatures before it goes into limp mode, which for long-term durability is going to bite them in the hind end, in my opinion.
What are they using to cool that transmission?
I can tell you about the cooling system on the Vet. I can't intelligently talk about where the actual cooling system's located on the Cadillac, but I will say this: I have been told by people at GM that do testing up at Milford that cooler location and airflow on the Cadillac with the LT4 and the automatic, they're getting better airflow in for transmission cooling. Now, don't confuse that with engine cooling, because, and I will say this, on the Corvette side, one of the things that we have figured out with aftermarket tuning and bolt-ons on a couple of my friends' cars that I race with is that if you put a bigger intercooler on an LT4 than what GM's offering, it takes the heat sink issue out of that engine.
Out of the engine, yeah. You have a lower IET too.
Yeah, well, Lingenfelter's on to something with the bigger cooler right now, and that's a direction that I look for GM once they finally want to acknowledge that there really, really is a problem and not just a hey, it's well, I mean, right now, and in all fairness to the OEM, because we got a lot of friends over there, I always try to give them a nod for the engineers are trying to do the right thing. But that said, we're living in a day and age where they want you to be able to go into a dealer, and if they can hook it up to the OBD2 port in a laptop, which is what we do in the shops, but if you can hook it up and fix it that way, they would rather do that, of course, because it's an easier fix all around. But I think what you're going to see, if not in 2016, by 2017, my honest prediction, Motorama Live's honest prediction is you're going to see a bigger intercooler offered by GM on the LT4 engine.
Well, and that's a normal aftermarket addition by anybody. Is of course the intercooler is integrated with the engine, but I think we're discussing the intercooler heat exchanger, which would be in the nose of the car.
Right, and especially when we're talking about transmission cooling, it's all about airflow. And there's an interesting thing I'd like to note. You guys, maybe you've got experience with this yet already, and maybe you don't, but on the Corvette side of things, with the Z cars and with the C6 and now in the C7 with the Z cars, there's been a big effort for high-speed racing use, which is what we buy and use the cars for. There's been a big effort from the factory on these cars to get the air flow out from under the car for obvious reasons. That way you get up there close to 200 mile an hour, they don't want to take off and fly like a Delta jet. And one of the well, it can happen. I've seen it happen, unfortunately. And one of the things that they're doing with the automatic transmission is, if you look on a manual shift car in the Corvette right now, the tranny cooler is in the rear of the car. On the automatic car, it's out in the front of the car. And one of the things they had to do for airflow on the 8-speed automatic on the new Corvette is when the air comes up through and goes through the tranny cooler, it is then on the automatic cars, the airflow is turned and pushed back down under the bottom of the car. And that has created some issues with those cars in slowing them down further, aerodynamically hurting them by putting dirty air under the cars up on the top end. But it unfortunately hasn't had the intended effect. They were hoping to get some of that heat out of there and make those automatic transmissions live behind all that power and torque. And obviously what we're seeing is they're still overheating.
Yeah, and we're hoping a lot of that is solved, of course, in the CTSVs that use that same LT4 engine, and that the ATSVs, which use the LF4, F as in Foxtrot, avoid the issue altogether. Although they share, I think they share the same 8-speed transmission, and so it'll be interesting. But I'm assuming for the Cadillacs, because they have completely different cooling challenges than the Corvettes do, that we're not going to see some of those issues that we see in the Corvettes. But we'll see.
Well, something you can keep your eye on right now. Johnny Lieberman over at Motor Trend, he's a pretty good egg. He's a pretty good guy, and Johnny is testing right now the new CTSV, and he wasn't shy about pointing out publicly the issues he encountered a couple weeks back with the C7 Z06 that he had and some of the overheating issues with that car. So like I said, he has got a V right now. He's got a CTSV right now. So it might be worth watching his Facebook streams right now and getting his public comments on that car over the next couple weeks as he thrashes on it.
And of course, anything that involves Cadillac is on my radar for any public announcement. Although it is kind of hard to, because so many people are just talking about things that don't have very much to do with Cadillac, and including the Cadillac hashtag. So, which I would prefer, if you only want to have a conversation about Cadillacs, use the Cadillac hashtag. If you're just selling a Cadillac, no need to. You should use the for sale hashtag.
Yeah. Well, Cadillac's in an interesting dilemma right now, and it's a good dilemma to have, I think. But with the second generation V cars, the enthusiasts really came to Cadillac in a way that they haven't in a lot of years. And now with the third generation V cars, especially this ATS-V track dog being kind of lightweight and a road course car, is Cadillac really going to be able to broaden its appeal amongst enthusiasts? Because a lot of us wanted to see either an LS motor or an LT motor in that ATS-V, and of course we got stuck with a twin turbo V6, which I still think is a good motor. But what's the next step for this car? What are they going to do? Are they going to finally give us a V8 in this thing, or are they just going to keep tuning on this 6 and trying to put out some more power?
So that's the question for tonight. And Barry, we didn't get a chance to hear your response because your battery died. The current ATS-V came with 464 horsepower in the LF4. If they come out with a plus model or a black model, limited production version of the ATS-V with even more power, how much power does it need?
Well, I can tell you that. I can't really tell you, but I can theoretically wish upon a star tell you that there is a test mule that may or may not exist that has an LS7 in it, and it is one hell of a car in theory. Wink, wink.
Now the LS7 made 505 horsepower in its last rendition, right?
That's the crank. That was the crank-rated horsepower. We've got a lot of experience with LS7 motors because that's the motor I race. That's personally my favorite motor that GM makes.
That's the source of the rumors. That mule, probably. We've heard rumors of an LS7 and an ATS, and no, that's probably the source of them. Is that mule?
Yeah, and exactly, and it's a mule that people swear doesn't exist. Even my friends at Milford tell me, unfortunately, because the position I'm in now versus before we got into this media thing, oh no, that car doesn't exist. But that car exists, and we know that car exists, even though we haven't actually been in it. And I can tell you the LS7 motor is one hell of a motor for that car, because if you look at the weight of that twin turbo 6 that's in there compared to the weight of an LS7, there's no reason not to put an LS7 in that car, other than the fact that I really believe GM wants these LT motors to take over, of course, and eventually replace the LS motors, regardless of how many of we enthusiasts are fighting tooth and nail for the LS to stick around in production, at least until they get these LT motors sorted out, because they're a completely different animal to work with.
Now, if they happen to have 500 or 1,000 of the LS7s, the LS7's out of production, I think.
No, it's still being produced at the moment.
If they happen to have 1,000 of them sitting around, it would make an interesting ATS-V 427, right?
I'll tell you right now, as a diehard Corvette guy, if they put an LS7 in an ATS-V, I will buy one.
And that way, if you do have kids, you're set.
Well, that's a whole lot.
I think they're still sorting out the supercharger on the LS7.
Well, there's no supercharger on an LS7. Remember that.
No, not on the one that you drove. No.
Oh, you think we'll still see a supercharged 7-liter?
I'm just kidding. It's not. It's not. Everything's on the table tonight. Why the hell not?
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
putting a blower on an LS7 is really a tough thing.
You have to have a clean sheet of paper. I understand that.
Oh
It's
yeah,
got to be the same motor.
we have several friends that have put blowers on LS7s, and I am yet to know someone personally that has put a blower on one that's made it live for more than 20,000 miles before they popped it.
Now that's what I was going to say. As scientists,
it's a full clean sheet of paper. You know, crankshaft, rods, pistons, heads, everything, even the block probably.
Well, you wouldn't even need to do that. You would just bring an LT4, a 7-liter LT4 out instead. You know, it's a 6.4 liter, right? And so you just
6.2, yeah.
Manufacture it as a 7-liter and mark it done. You wouldn't go back and supercharge an LS7.
Bored out LSA basically.
Well, here's the funny thing. With an LS7 in an ATSV, you've essentially done. Chevrolet's had this problem for years. They have struggled to not let the Camaro be faster than the Corvette for obvious reasons.
Yeah, silly.
Yeah, I mean it's a price thing, it's a sales thing, it's a pride thing, it's a lot of marketing hooey. And look how long it took them to finally put the LS7 in the Camaro and build the Z28 that we begged them for since 2009. So
it just lets the Corvette people be complacent. That's what it does.
Well, you know, the cars are two different. The Camaro's never going to be as aerodynamic as the new Corvette. At least I don't think. That said, the new Corvette's not as aerodynamic as the previous two iterations were. But I think an LS7 and an ATSV, or even an LS3 and an ATSV, would be a better car than putting a new LT motor, whether it be LT1 or LT4. Again, until they get it sorted out.
No, I don't think you could go back and put an LS3. I think that would be out of the question. With the new motor being the LT1, that if they were going that way, normally aspirated, but I don't think we'll see. I think what Dave Leone's saying is we won't see a V8 in an ATSV, and so if we're not going to see a V8, then how much do you have to pump up the LF4? So it's got 464 horsepower. I think the M3s are making 487. They're actually rated below that, but BMW rates they say the crank horsepower, but what they're really saying is the wheel horsepower. And so I think at the crank, the M3s are making 484. The Mercedes AMGs are making 503 in the black model. And so how many horsepower would you need to bring in the ATSV Plus if your competitors are making 487 and 503?
Well, I was just thinking to contrast it with the existing model, you'd need about 510.
Yeah, 50 more than what you've got now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Barry, what would you say?
Well, here's my thought on it, and it's not always a popular answer amongst the OEM faithful, but in my experience, most people that buy a track-focused car modify the car. Very few people that buy them and actually track them leave them stock. They might initially, but they eventually modify it. And if you want to talk about a car that you're buying specifically to go out here and track, to race, to modify, that's where we get into the LS motors are still so much easier to modify than the LT motors and make horsepower. That's where I get back to my recommendation to LS. And the reason I keep making that point about the ATSV is when the ATSV was under development, the car was slated to have an LS3, and Tin Can Dan, the former CEO over at GM, and he earns that nickname in my opinion, Tin Can Dan personally killed the idea of putting the LS3 in the ATSV, but the car was engineered to have that motor in it to start with. And a lot of us are disappointed that it doesn't.
Well, but again, two things. One, that ship has sailed. And two, the chief engineer over there now, Leone, says it's not getting a V8. So if you had to live with the LF4, what do they have to tune it to for a plus model?
All you've got to do, and this is probably what they'll do, all you've really got to do to make that an over 500 horsepower car, especially to crank, is just hook up EFI Live and go into the tune and modify it a little bit. No, I'm serious, because we have messed around with these twin turbo inline six BMWs before, the old 335i's with the inline six with the twin turbo, which in my mind is a square on competitor on the track for the ATS-V. And the V is overall probably a better handling car because of the suspension wizardry and a few other goodies they've put on the car. But the truth of the matter is, the Turbo 6 is a great motor to tune on. And you don't even have to put bigger turbos on it. I'm telling you, bigger downpipes, bigger exhaust, bigger air intake. Not even the intake of the motor, just the air intake and a tune. And you're easily at 5 1/4 to 5 1/2 crank horsepower on that car the way it exists right now.
Yeah, that's what I think too, is that every aftermarket tuner is adding at least 50 horsepower on the LF3, and the LF4 has got more boost, and so I would be shocked if we don't see, you know, at least 50 horsepower tunes on the LF4s once we get them out on the street. Mike, did you get a chance to give your advice to Cadillac on what to bring?
Oh, no. I don't have any opinion on this. I don't know what a limit is, or, you know, I don't know how they rationale what they do.
Yeah, I think Jim's argument's probably good, is that you've got to do a 50 horsepower step is probably the right step. And 500 horsepower still keeps you well below the 640 horsepower they're bringing in the CTS-V. So that, you know, for marketing, they can still say, hey, you need to move on to the CTS-V.
I see three ways to get that too. Go ahead, Mike. You
always have to save something for the next year. I mean, you can't give the best car possible this year. What are you going to sell next year?
The LSA stayed static for what, 6 years? 6 model years?
And there's a reason for that, because remember, almost everybody that was buying a V was buying it for that motor. And I know dozens of people that own those cars in coupe sedan and wagon form, and I think I know 2 that haven't modified that engine and opened up the potential.
Well, I like the suspension the best on my car. The motor's great, but in this part of the country, you can use the suspension every day, but you rarely get to use the motor.
Yep. And of course, Jim drives CTS-V. Air Mike drives an XLR-V. I drive a STS-V and an XLR. Barry drives everything because he goes from car to car to car.
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to switch channels completely, and we're going to think about our truck factory out in Arlington, which is where all the Escalades come from now. What happened when the Avalanche retired? The Avalanche was a cousin to the Escalade EXT, which is the am I getting that wrong?
Escalade truck.
The
Escalade EXT was the Cadillac Avalanche, yes.
Yep. And I keep thinking EXT was the extended version because EXT is extended, but the EXT
was ESC, I believe. It's alphabet
That's
soup.
Eldorado. Yeah.
Alphabet soup. That's part of the problem. So Cadillac made a version of the Avalanche for a while, but it was an Escalade, and it had an open pickup bed, and they would put a cover on it, but it was a short bed pickup truck. It turns out here in Texas that was the most popular version of the Escalade.
Absolutely.
Those were oversubscribed. So basically it was a 4-passenger cab with a short pickup bed in the back, and that way you could throw stuff back in the pickup bed. So does Escalade need to bring that back in the current edition? And how would you do that?
If they can sell enough to break even, I'd do it.
Oh, they're selling as many as they can make right now. They're diverting production from the other models. You know, they're diverting production to the most expensive models because they can't make enough trucks. You know, they're at something like 7 days on the dealership right now.
If the people want it, so give it to them.
As long as gas prices stay low. Now, what we think is gas prices are going down 20 cents in the next few months because they got the refineries back online. The oil production in America stayed high. Now we've got Iran coming back online, and so we're going to see oil prices further challenged, and we're going to see gas prices continue to go down, which, from the people who were talking peak oil 4 years ago to we're awash in oil this year, it's no surprise that GM was kind of caught with their SUV, not enough SUVs on the Cadillac showroom, and not enough smaller things than the Escalade.
Bruce, let me ask you something about that. Now, Cadillac's been making some really interesting, and I use the word interesting kind of liberally, some interesting moves this past 2 quarters, I'll say now, with really wanting to distance themselves from kind of the old GM and even kind of the new GM, wanting to be seen as more of an upscale, further deeper into the luxury territory kind of brand. Will the new Cadillac, with their, wanting to step up the luxury level of things, are they going to stay in the truck market at all? I think it's a valid question.
I think every luxury manufacturer is living in the truck market, and so for Cadillac to say, I'm going to move out of the truck market because I want to be a luxury manufacturer would be nonsensical. Now, that doesn't mean that isn't what they'll do, okay? I'm not arguing that. But
Cadillac invented the truck market in the luxury field with the Escalade in, 97?
They own the full-size SUV market, luxury SUV market.
They really do, but here's the thing. If you look at it, Cadillac has really set its sights on taking on Germany, and they've always rattled the can about it, but they really seem like that's what they want to do right now is take on German luxury. If you look at what's defined as a truck in the European market or an SUV versus what Cadillac offers, which is let's face it, it's a nice vehicle, but it's a fancied up GM truck. That doesn't really play with high-end luxury in the European mindset, and if that's the customer you're going after, what they really need is something bigger and better than an SRX, but yet not necessarily as truck-like as an Escalade.
Yeah, and they have that coming. They do have that coming. The XT5 is on its way now to replace the SRX, and they have a smaller one coming and a larger one coming. So there's 3 models coming to replace the SRX.
Okay.
So they just can't get them here fast enough. The problem is 5 years ago, they didn't foresee us having cheap oil.
Well, 5 years ago, with what GM was going through and what they were just coming off of, SUV was a dirty word in the market at that time. It wasn't just $4 oil; it was a PR problem. Because don't forget, a lot of people point and say that while trucks made a lot of money for GM, they're kind of, I hate to call it arrogance, but they're arrogance about thinking they knew the market best. And between the misspend and the lack of R&D, when some of the competitors, namely Ford, got way out ahead of them on R&D for a few years, they really fell behind. And when they fell behind, it left them in a quandary. And part of that quandary was they looked around, and most of their market, most of their lots were full of trucks, including the Cadillac lot. And they had to get rid, and they had to try to distance themselves from something that was still a profit center.
Yeah, I think that's been the challenge is as the market changed, then trying to figure out how do you react fast enough. Their product cycle times are too long for them to rapidly bring something to market. I think you hit on a nerve, though, with the Escalade, that Cadillac wants to be bespoke chassis, bespoke engines, and distanced from GM powertrain. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they manage that. When you see the XT5 come to market, it literally looks like a cross between the current SRX and the current Escalade. So they're trying to keep the look of the Escalade in a smaller form factor. But Cadillac's still saying the wrong thing, like when they're asked about, well, where's our SRX V-Sport? Then the head of Cadillac said, I can't even bring that up with the engineers because they would roll their eyes at me because, trying to make an SUV into a sporty car doesn't make good sense from an engineering point of view. And that's not that's the opposite of good marketing. Good marketing is when you look and see everybody wants to buy an SRX with a sport suspension and a hot engine, and Cadillac refuses to sell to them.
There you go. That's dumb.
That's
Oh,
dumb.
absolutely. But there were some real You got to remember, and I'm not trying to overly defend GM because they really did, kind of reap what they sowed there for a while. But being a lifelong GM owner and fan, I got to tell you, they really had a PR problem for a while, and they kind of had to let between legal, the bean counters, and PR trying to spin its way out of the mess it was in. R&D got shoved by the wayside, regardless of what they knew they should be doing marketing-wise. They went into a little bit of a tailspin there while they were trying to find new footing. And so some of the products you're seeing now, some of the good products you're seeing come out of that now was some stuff that probably would have been in the pipeline earlier had they not been, inside of an F5 twister, basically.
Exactly. And so, on the bright side, they've got the right products coming to market, and hopefully the market will continue the trends we see today of inexpensive oil, young families wanting sport model SUVs, and continuing to enjoy the Escalade and keep a short turn time. Cadillac has been very successful in the last year, not at moving maximum number of units, but at raising the average transaction price. Their average transaction price is actually just below Mercedes now, and so they have made great strides. The money per sale is way up for Cadillac. Now, Cadillac still has the challenge that they have 4 times more dealers than, say, Audi does, and GM has struggled with the advantage of that, of course, is access. The disadvantage of that is each Cadillac store has 4 times more challenge to make a profit compared with an Audi store.
Right. Well, if you're going to step up price and profitability, which obviously they're trying to do, then you've got to go after a higher-end luxury market. If you're going to do that, you've got to have the products to support that across your whole suite. You can't just have 1 or 2 and keep saying, "Oh, we've got more on the way."
oh, you can. They've been now the current predicament though is we were expecting the ATS. Cadillac was expecting the ATS to move 5,000 units a month, and the ATS has not moved 5,000 units a month. And so if the ATS were moving 5,000 units a month, which was their target, they were hoping for 3 series sales out of the ATS, which would be 9,000 units a month. And so if the ATS had made that target, the 9,000 units a month would match the BMW. Cadillac said their target was 5,000 units a month. Last month they sold something like 2,500. So it's hitting half the target. So what was supposed to be keeping the showrooms alive right now was the ATS and the CTS. And what's killed Cadillac is the market's turned because of low gas prices, low oil prices, and resulting low gas prices. The market's turned back from sedans to SUVs, and Cadillac was caught mid-cycle in the SRX.
That makes sense. But also don't forget, there's some enthusiast buyers out there that aren't buying the ATS-V that they thought would because it doesn't have a V8 in it.
Yeah, that's true. Now the part of that upsets me is Cadillac would tell you, hey, if you want a V8, we've got a supercharged V8 in the CTS-V. Why don't you come buy it? And my argument is you should be making every car you make the best car it can be.
Yes.
And so there's luxury in options. And so if some of your buyers want an LS3 and an ATS-V, that should be an option. Charge them another $4,000 for an engine that's cheaper for you to make. You've got a flexible assembly line at Lansing Grand River. Why aren't you using it?
Bingo. And you just stumbled on, in my opinion, what has been the GM Achilles heel for the last 2 decades. They can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Well, it's that idea that we're not marketing to people who want to buy Cadillacs. We're marketing to the people we want to buy Cadillacs. That I don't understand.
Yeah, that's not.
You know what I think you need to be doing? I think you need to be selling every darn car that you can sell to everybody that wants to buy a Cadillac. That's what you need to be doing. And
Well,
you should be thanking everybody that comes into the showroom to buy a car. That's what you should be doing.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, if they really want to get into the bespoke luxury business, at some point they've got to get away from this GM high volume mentality, and realize that if you want to attract a Mercedes AMG buyer or a BMW M buyer, then you can't just take the car you've got now and raise the price point on it. You've got to raise the actual amount of luxury and performance that you get in the car, but alongside of that, you've also got to be smart with your marketing and PR campaign with the car, and you've got to go grassroots. You got to get butts in seats, not just for sales, but to get people out there to understand that, hey, this isn't the old Cadillac anymore. This isn't the old Buick interior with a Cadillac logo out front with an engine out of a something you could also find at the Chevy dealership. So
yeah, there was a great comment that way where one of the auto journalists was telling his friend, "Hey, did you go look at his friend was considering a luxury coupe, and he said, "Did you go look at the ATS?" And his friend said, "Well, isn't that built like on the Chevy Cruze platform?"
Yeah.
And
exactly.
no, it's not. That's a brand new platform that the ATS is on. Now, and the CTS is on the ATS platform now, but so it's a bespoke Cadillac chassis with the powertrain engine in it, and so they didn't just take the same car and raise the price. It's actually a brand new car. It's just that they're not marketing it. What TV commercials are you seeing for the CTS and for the ATS and for the rest of the line? They go from we're going to hire a new advertising place, and then we go 3 months with nothing, and then they say, okay, we're going to spend another $20 million and hire a new advertising place, and we go another 3 months with nothing. Or this last thing they put out where they said, hey, we're going to have these 4 guys show you what the latest styles you should be wearing are. Yeah, how many guys did that get out of their BMW?
And they're not going to, because here's the thing. They don't need to market themselves like BMW. BMW already has an established presence and an established cadence of people marching into their dealerships. If they really want to go after that customer, they need to get out of the box and quit worrying about hiring a new advertising or a new PR agency, and instead tell the ones that they got, listen, here's what we want to do. No, seriously, it's as a marketing professional and somebody that owns my own shop over here with that too, that kills me when it comes to GM, because I know personally several people that work inside of GM Communications and GM Marketing that are good professionals, and I know that they've got better marketing in them, but I don't feel like they're allowed to do those kind of campaigns because there's some top-down executive level push that says you must use the agency, and in 9 times out of 10, the agency could give a shit about whether GM sells more cars or not. It's all about how many more hours can we bill GM a month. But that's a whole other thing.
You get what you get. Management principle. You get what you incentivize.
Well, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. And so if I were GM, and clearly they don't call and ask my opinion, they have my phone number, believe me, because I've received calls about what we should and shouldn't do in their cars in the past. So they know my number. But if I was GM, I got to tell you, I would be traveling around the country right now like Ford's doing with the new GT350. I'd be traveling around the country with a truckload of ATSVs and CTSVs going to VIR, going to Road Atlanta, going to Watkins Glen, going to Sears Point, going out to Laguna Seca, and I wouldn't just be inviting journalists. Hell, the hell with 99 out of each 100 journalists can't afford these damn cars anyway, and they get to drive them through the press fleet. Believe me, I know about this.
Oh, wow.
Invite enthusiasts. Get a hold of BMW Club of America's owner list, Porsche Club of America's members list. Invite them to come out to your track days. Get these people.
We've seen that. They did that once a few years ago, and the BMW guys turned out, and the core BMW establishment guys were just radiating green, but because real BMW guys were coming out and saying, well, this car's better than our car, some of them.
Right.
And this is
At the
when
CTSV challenge, yeah. I loved one of the journalists brought his personal S7, but he burned the brakes up on it after a couple of laps on the track, and so he switched over and got to drive one of the CTSVs instead. But but that was, as Barry said, the life of a journalist, because he was paying his own way. He was trying to figure out how not to tell his wife he'd had to buy new tires for the car. And they were sharing a room at the hotel in order to keep the gig working together. So.
Yeah, but I mean, why? Let me assess. If you were Cadillac and you really believed in this new product, why would you not be out doing a road show right now to get the enthusiast cars in front of the proper enthusiast audience? And I don't mean a one-off event. I'm talking literally a couple of transporters with graphics down the side of them, advertising what we're doing, and going all over the country and putting on a road show.
Yeah, there's about 3 different BMW blogs. I would bring a CTSV and an ATSV out to the BMW bloggers and let them test them side by side at the track. Invite those guys out, and they're still going to say the M5 is better. They're still going to say the M3 is better, but you'll get a detailed review from them with criteria on what they like and what they don't like. And what you do is you use that to improve the car.
Yes, absolutely.
Use that to improve the car.
Do you know why the new Mustang is actually such a good car? Because the new Camaro was a good car. Why is the new Silverado a good truck? Because the F-150 was so darn good. I mean, it's that kind of a thing that you've got to feed off of, and not just with a luxury customer, but especially with the performance customer.
Yeah, this is a perfect form to me of modern interactive marketing. I was watching, Barry and I have been experimenting some with Periscope. I was watching a Periscope of this lady that does exercise videos and mommy blogger kind of videos, and she said she couldn't find a pair of headphones that were really sturdy enough and she could run in them and worked well for her and would hold up over time. And so she said one of the headphone companies contacted her and said, we want to work with you on that problem. We don't know that we have a set of headphones right now that'll hold up for you and work with you over time, but we would like to work with you on, because if that's a problem in the market, that's a niche that we would like to pursue. And so we'd like to get our engineers together with you and understand what's going wrong with our headphones now, and then we'll look at what do we have to reinforce in order to get a set of headphones that you can go out and run with, because that's a regular problem real people have. And so if you want to find out what needs to be happening at Lansing Grand River to make the ATSV increase in sales, that's who you ask the BMW guys and the Mercedes guys, because that's who you want to sell the cars to.
Absolutely.
Ask them what's wrong with the car now. The best-selling car in the class is the BMW 3 Series, and what Cadillac did with the ATS is they came out with a car that was identical to the previous BMW 3 Series, and it's still not selling. And so what you got to do is you have to sit down with those guys that are buying those cars and ask them, what do you want us to change in this? And part of it is they brought it to, and I said this in my videos, part of it is they brought it to market not understanding that BMW underrates their engines, and it's not sufficient for you to bring a few more horsepower. You have to bring significantly more horsepower than BMW's advertising.
In spite of the fact that GM used to play exactly that same game in the past.
But they're not playing it this week. They're doing SAE ratings on their engines, and so their ratings are what the engines are making at the crank, and BMW is rating their engines at the wheels. And so, Cadillac's showing up, and the BMWs are still quicker, the BMWs are still faster, and so then the BMW fanboys are saying, oh, sorry, I'm going to write a check for my BMW instead.
Well, and you're never going, I won't say never, but you're not like to sway the dyed in the wool, like if somebody's a diehard Ford guy, you're not going to get them out of an F-150, no matter what Chevy puts out or what Dodge puts out or Ram or whatever they are nowadays. I think the same thing is true in the luxury mark to a point. If someone is a dyed-in-the-wool BMW person, you're not going to get a Beamer. You're not going to get a Beamer guy to buy a Cadillac, just like you're not going to get somebody that's dyed-in-the-wool Cadillac to buy a Lincoln, on and on and on. But you got to remember that the world is changing as well, whether we like it or not. And one of the things that I found is that people are slowly but surely getting away from fanboy status and being more open-minded about what they want in vehicles. Not all the way across the board, but especially in the younger buyers, you see less brand loyalty and more about what's now. What's the infotainment system like? What kind of how well does it interact with my smartphone? Just as much as you see what kind of performance, what kind of fuel mileage, what kind of suspension, all those kind of things. And GM in general, especially Cadillac, but GM in general, I think is still a little bit behind on the thinking in that versus what we've seen from some of the other OEMs, especially the ones that they're trying to compete head-to-head with.
Barry, I think there's still the people that are dyed in the wool, only it's not cars now. It's different products. So the car dealers need to get that generation turned to their cars, like the iPhone. The people that are iPhones, they don't have anything to do with the Android apps, So you still need to get the age group into the cars just like you did in the past.
Exactly. And I'll tell you something funny. On the Corvette side of the house, there has been a newer, younger breed of Corvette buyer with this generation Corvette than they've seen in the last few generations of Corvette. And that's a good thing, but it's also one of those things where you got to go deeper into the story of why, is it that all of us previous generation Corvette buyers are still buying new Corvettes and there's new people coming to the fold? Or is it that there's just more new people coming into the fold, but there's less of us that have the previous generation Corvettes that are buying the new one? You can't just, you got to take care of your established base as well as your expansion base. And they don't always do the best job of that either. And in particular, I know a lot of guys right now that own C6 Z06s and ZR1s that have taken a pass on buying the new C7 car, and some of them are flat out waiting to see what the C8, the next generation Corvette's going to be like, just because they feel like the car has gotten too far away, the new car has gotten too far away from the things that they love about the existing car. So
one last quick topic. We're 10 minutes past our 30 minutes past our 30-minute show.
Yay, overtime. Love overtime.
One last quick topic for Air Mike. Air Mike had a problem with his XLRV where the trunk accidentally stuck, and he was working on it. So tell us your progress on it, Mike.
Oh, it's all finished. I guess you haven't looked at the...
I caught up a little bit on the text, but capture it for us in the video.
Oh. Well, the top had been repaired. The pump went bad months ago, and they repaired that, and the wiring was just not properly put back together, so it had a loose connection. I got it all put back like it belongs, and it works perfect.
Good. And I saw your note. That so Mike had asked for anyone to post a picture of their top compartment. So I ran out to my XLRV and posted some pictures and a short video of my compartment. And then Mike posted a response that, thanks, good, I see where that's supposed to go. And one of my wires isn't tucked away properly either. And so I've got a homework assignment to do Saturday to go try and understand which of my wires isn't pinned back. But good, I'm glad that your trunk's all good. And I saw your next post of your other car all polished up, so good on the Mustang, so good job on that.
Oh, well, that'll be my wife's car. Don't accuse me of having that.
Mike's lucky. Mike's
the
lucky.
wife,
A good girl's card.
so the wife has Mustang, huh?
Isn't
Yeah.
that right, Barry? Isn't that a good girl's car?
You know, if you had asked me that question about 6 years ago, I would have laughed and said, "Yeah, it's the secretary car." I tell you something. When we started getting into this media game, I literally had to make an effort to take my blinders off and try to be fair and balanced about other OEMs. And
I was pulling
it's
your leg.
it literally has helped me grow as a person because if you'd asked me 6 years ago, hey, 6 years ago I still was the guy that had the little Calvin whizzing on a blue oval on the back of my my Chevrolet, you know. But nowadays I got to tell you, the new Mustangs are really something else. Even the generation of Mustang that just replaced was a good enough car that I actually considered buying one. And came so close to buying a heavily modified 13 model, and it's just they're good they're a different car now than they used to be.
Yep. One of the things in my kind of how I set the budget in my mind is after we rented a 16 Mustang during our Carolina trip, convertible, as I said, since you can get those for around 30, that kind of shaped how much I was willing to pay for my XLR when I went to go get an 8-year-old XLR.
You know what I think the Mustang did well is they still have a girl secretary's car. You know, that base Mustang still is, and now the performance Mustang is a Mustang guy's car.
Yeah, and they have a special version with a single plane V8. You know, that's thinking out of the box.
Two cars that are actually true sports cars, but that are also tremendously sensitive about being called girls' cars. Can you name what the two cars I have in mind are?
Miata.
The Miata is one of them. Can you name the other one?
The VW Bug.
No, well that's
Nissan 300.
It's not a serious sports car.
300ZX.
300ZX. I don't think of it as a secretary car, but I'll put that on my list. The one that surprised me,
Not the 350, the 300.
That owners are really sensitive about it being called a secretary's car. But it's a nice sports car. Any other guesses?
The Hellcat.
The Hellcat in pink. The Hellcat in no, it's the Porsche Boxster is the one I have in mind.
Oh Lord.
Ah, yes. The
Porsche Boxster, actually a well-balanced car. It has a nice little engine. It corners well. The interior, that's the one that their used car prices plummet, so you can pick up, a Boxster for not that much money. And as soon as you buy one, your best friend will say to you, "Is that your secretary's car?" I was really surprised about that, but apparently there's a great deal of sensitivity on that topic, and that may be what's driven them to buy the sedan version of that car instead. Okay, we're gonna. I'm all choked up because of the end of the show.
Don't fail on us now, Bruce. Come on.
Well, what I like to do is for our close, we go around and see any final statements or words of wisdom for our viewers. And we'll start with you, Air Mike.
I have no statements.
We'll put you on the spot. And we covered all three of our topics tonight. Now, did putting the topics out on on the Google Plus work, or would you rather see the topics in the forum?
I prefer the forum, yes.
Okay. And Jim, any words of wisdom for us, Cadillac Jim?
Well, there's one thing we haven't mentioned at all tonight with all this new model talk. There's some new Cadillac-only engines coming out. One of which you've mentioned in the past is a 4.5-liter V8. That is a possibility for the ATS. You say it's going to have a twin supercharger on it. That would, on the 4.5-liter.
Yeah, it's going to be twin turbo.
Yeah, so that's a possibility. Another thing is an all-new V6. We've already said that, well, maybe they're leaving room for tune, but they're probably pushing the limits on the airflow for the existing V8 now, V6 now. What about a better V6? And of course, the third way they could get it is, as you point out, a retune of the existing V6, following the lead of what's out there. But this has a disadvantage of not leaving the room for the tuners, the low-hanging fruit for the tuners, which I think is a big appeal for these cars. So I think that the second two are more likely, a different V6 or a new engine entirely. The 4.5 liter we're thinking about for the bigger cars.
Yeah, the two engines we're expecting for the CT6, there's a 3-liter V6 twin turbo coming, which would be smaller than the 3.6 liter that's in the ATS-V, and there's a 4.5 liter twin turbo V8 coming that is finally the V8 version of the current V6 architecture coming to market. Okay, and Barry, any last advice thank you for being on with us tonight.
Yeah.
And trapped in your truck there in the dark, but thank you for being on. Any last words of wisdom for our audience?
Find a light and turn on here. I look like the Blair Witch Project over here.
I thought you were going in the witness protection program.
Oh, I live in the witness protection program. But I would say this: if Cadillac and if any of you up in the Ren Center listening, or up in your fancy new digs in Manhattan, if any of you are listening, please, on behalf of Motorama Live, if not Caddy Info as well, we ask you, build the seal, however you pronounce it, and put a better name for rednecks down in Texas to pronounce on that car, because we'll buy it and put some horns on the hood of it. But build.
A V12 has less rotating weight than a V8 for the same displacement.
Quit teasing us with this car and actually nut up and build it, because I got to tell you something. If you want to make a really bold statement that Cadillac is moving in the direction of uber luxury, build that car. The buyers will come.
You're very wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. The CL, which is a CIEL show car, and we're expecting that one to come to market as the CT8. The CT6 will have some of the looks of that car, but the actual big car and available in sedan, coupe, or convertible, we're expecting as the CT7 or the CT8. Cadillac's hinting they may call it a CT7 instead of a CT8 in order to leave them room in the future for the CT8 model. But we are, Barry makes a good point. We are expecting that one to come to market. The CT6 can't get here soon enough. Also, the replacement for the ATS, the dealers are saying the ATS, they can't market the ATS because the rear seats are too pinched. And so if you're a young family just affording your first luxury car, you need space. And the ATS doesn't have as much interior space. Now, I can't believe that's true versus the 3 Series, but I'm repeating for you what the dealers are reporting.
Nobody buys a 3 Series to sit in the back seat. Even if it does have 4. Nobody buys a Volkswagen Jetta to sit in the back seat, for God's sake. So,
but one of the things Cadillac is saying is the CT3, when it comes, is not a replacement for the ATS, and is not a replacement for the CTS. There is no replacement for the ATS. The ATS is one and done. And so when the CT3 arrives, it'll be a new car in a new form factor.
So
I've got to check out of here. Barry, it's good to meet you.
Thanks for being on, Mike.
All right, see y'all later.
Thanks. Jim, thanks for being on tonight. What's going to happen next is I'm going to hit stop broadcast. We'll still be on for a moment. One of the new things we tried this week is I included the hashtag CaddyInfo as a way to stream questions into the video. So if you're watching us live next time, that's a way you can do Q&A from YouTube using your any Twitter account. Using a hashtag CaddyInfo is another way that you can interact with us while we're live in the video. If you want to be part of our conversation one of these weeks, what you need to do is contact me, Bruce Nunnally, at CaddyInfo. contact me on Google Plus, contact me on Twitter, contact me, ring my cell if you know my cell number, contact me on LinkedIn. You can find my LinkedIn on my Twitter page. Let me know that you want to be on. If you want to be on and talk about your products, you have a Cadillac-related product you want to be on, bring it. That we love Cadillac-related products, and Jim and I may be two of your first customers. And so come talk to us. I'm going to hit stop broadcast. Hold on just a second, guys.